listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
All right, what's going off? Hope you're well, and thanks so much for listening to my podcast, Straight to Video. I'm your host, Rob Lane, and this is episode 288 of the show. We're so close to 300 episodes, a real milestone, so thank you to all who continue to listen and support. So who should I chat to for the big 300? Please drop me a line if you have any cool ideas. Today, though, I get to have a really fun talk with a super cool guy in the form of Will Turpin. Musician, producer, owner of Reel to Reel Studios in Jonesboro, Georgia, but perhaps most well known as the bass player for the iconic rock band Collective Soul, who this year are celebrating, get this, 30 years as a band. To coincide with that, they have a brand new double album with 20 tracks called Here to Eternity, which, if you listen to this show when it goes live, is released today. I've had a chance to listen to the new album, and I can assure you the band are still on amazing form and as creative and powerful as ever. Collective Soul were one of the bands I gravitated to in the mid-90s when hard rock was really out of favour, and whilst they could be considered an alternative band at the time, they had just enough melody and a hard rock vibe to their sound to reel me in, and I've been a fan ever since. Will has a really cool and friendly vibe, which I'm sure will translate in our chat, so whilst it's only a brief talk, I'm sure you'll enjoy some of his stories. As always, this Straight to Video podcast is proudly presented to you in association with Affinity Photo, an incredible piece of photo editing software which I use all the time for graphic design. Affinity Photo, I use it for the podcast episode artwork you see each week, and it's an extremely affordable alternative to other programs on the market, so please, if you can, check them out at affinity.serif.com. Alright, let's not mess around and get into today's talk. The new album from Collective Soul, Here to Eternity, is out now wherever you pick up your music, and all information about the band along with dates for their upcoming massive US tour with Hootie and the Blowfish can be found at collectivesoul.com, and also check out Will's recording studio, Reel to Reel, at reel-life.net. That's Reel spelled R-E-E-L. But for now, please enjoy my Straight to Video chat with Collective Soul's Will Turpin. How's it going, Will?
Good, man. How you doing?
Yeah, great to see you, mate. Great to see you. How's your day going so far?
Pretty good, man. Waking up here. It's spring break, known as spring break in the States. My wife had to, our youngest son's a senior, and she felt like she had to troll our youngest son. So we're down here for 3 days, staying as close as we can to them without invading their space too much.
How old is he now, your son?
He's 18. I mean,
oh, dude.
My parents let me do that stuff all the time with nobody, but it's okay. I'm taking on the fun as it is. You know, like I said, we're trolling my son and his friends.
Excellent stuff. Well, I appreciate you taking some time to do this for me. 30 years of Collective Soul this year, huge summer tour with Hootie and the Blowfish lined up. But what I think is most impressive, a brand new album, Here to Eternity, out in May, a mighty 20-track double album. I mean, not something that is the norm these days, but proving that Collective Soul is creative as ever, but just doing your own thing pretty much like you've done from day one. Must be a pretty exciting time.
Yeah, it is, man. 30 years, you know, we started out definitely with I don't know why we were so young and kind of mature, I guess, because we kind of came from the studio. But I remember we started out wanting to be known for our music. We wanted to serve the songs. And sure enough, 30 years later, man, our songs are still around and we're still as creative as ever, man.
A double album though, dude.
Honestly, we've always wanted to do a double album. That goes way back. It's just one of those things that we finally got to get it done. And then it's just something that's part of us. You know, we've got a lot of friends our age, peers that don't create as much anymore. But man, as far as Collective Soul goes, recording is just as good and just as much fulfilling to us as playing live.
Have you got any favorite double albums of the past?
I mean, definitely Yellow Brick Road. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, of course. What else do we got? Help me out.
I always think of Kiss Alive too, but that's kind of
that's you. I was into the Beatles and stuff when some of my friends were into Kiss, you know what I mean? But I do like that record, and I knew that record because of my friends.
I've had a chance to listen to the new album. It's fantastic. Collective Soul, I'm going to use the term, a reliable band with just such great instant hooks, and you always sound so fresh to me. Even when I started listening to you back in the day, you were like no other band, and that's still the case. Are you all still as excited about music now when you first get in that room and eager to see what you're going to create this time round? Is it always exciting?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, you kind of know it's right when like the hairs stand up on your arm, you know. It's still those same instinctual, creative kind of things that we've leaned on our entire career, man. And like you said in the beginning, we do what we want to do. And the way it started out with Atlantic Records, the first record was an independent record, so they had nothing to do with that creatively. So the second record, guess what they did? They let us do whatever we wanted to do. And nobody was in the studio with us telling us we got to be this or that, or it wasn't quite like Pirates in the Castle, but I mean, all of a sudden we had a real budget and we were in the studio allowed to do whatever we wanted to. And sure enough, it's always been successful for us thanks to the strength of Ed's songwriting mixed with just the chemistry of the band. Yeah, man, it's still those same exact feelings that we had in the earlier days.
These new songs, they've got an extra great story is that you recorded in Elvis's second home, I believe, in Palm Springs. How was that whole experience? Is it something of a time capsule?
It actually is, yeah. Good. I've been using that word in the interviews. It's definitely a little bit of a time capsule. We befriended someone who was partners with the guy who Tim had bought the Palm Springs house years ago, and he was slowly fixing it, making it livable, but he had not changed a single thing as far as carpet, the pink tile in the master bath that Priscilla would have picked out. So it's super, super awesome. Great vibes, of course. But yeah, it was a bit of a time capsule. It was a little bit run down. Ed spent the night there, but the rest of us were in one of Burt Lancaster's Palm Springs homes.
As you do.
Which is exactly where we kind of started toying with the phrase "here to eternity" after one of Burt Lancaster's most famous films. So, man, Palm Springs is one of those towns, super cool, laid back, very open, but kind of small, right? So within a week, because we all usually hang out together, within a week, everybody, it didn't matter if you're a vendor or a store owner, especially the clothing store owners, the restaurants, within a week, everybody's like, yeah, there's Collective Soul. They're recording a record here this month, So we were literally there for a whole month at Elvis's house every day.
Unreal. How was you set up? Was you set up as a band? Was you like working the songs up there, or was everything pretty much ready to go?
We still do a lot on site. Now, we had heard a lot of those songs, and some of those songs we had done some pre-production on either at Ed's house or wherever. We had done some pre-production on some of those tunes. But for the most part, man, we think about it as a song a day. So we get in there, we just try to find the flow. Like I said, one of the tests for me is like when I get that moment and I feel that tingly sensation, I'm like, okay, we're onto something here. And in one day, the song wouldn't be totally complete, but the essence of the song is complete and the rhythm section stuff is done. And we know where to go to finish the tune.
Outside of the band, you work in the studio set up in the late 70s by your dad, Bill, reel to reel in Jonesboro, Georgia, which Ed, your singer, used to work in, and the studio which pretty much gave birth to Collective Soul. But is it important for Collective Soul now to go somewhere else to record the band, somewhere outside of your comfort zone? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's more, let's find somewhere that we can be a band. We still let's think about the word band, right? You got to be together. For us, it's not this, hey, I'm going to send a track to Johnny in Indianapolis and let him cut the drums. And of course, great music can come of that as well. But we like to be a band, and we feel like the magic happens when you are a band and you come together as a band. So that's always been one of the things that we've liked to do is go on location somewhere. In the second record in Dosage, we were really fond of Criteria Studios in Miami. We'd rent homes and stay near the studio and go to the studio every day and be a band.
Eat together, hang out together.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's, again, that's the definition of a band. You got to hang together, man.
It's the creative process as well. It's like when I get to play bass on tracks, I'm a little bit lazy. I don't want to learn to record at home, but I do love going in with a producer and someone to bounce ideas off and all that kind of thing. It's that experience in that environment.
We feel like that's the way, and then once we start the essence of those tunes, then some stuff gets done at reel to reel or somebody else's studio. You mentioned that hub, my father's studio. Yeah. Me and my friends, including Dean, Ed's younger brother, we watched Ed work on his craft at that studio. And when my father passed away, I walked in there. I was like, man, I'm not letting this place go, man. It's too much of a genius build. Yeah, I'm there all the time still. And I've updated the place. And man, it's good, man. It's good to be able to tour, create music. And then I get to produce and pass it on, man. Hopefully pass it on to somebody else.
Did your dad own a music store too? Is that like a guitar store or was it like a record store?
It was more a guitar store. His buddy had the record store down the street, but it was super small town. And my dad just, it was kind of a ways to a means. He was in bands himself and he wanted to record. And man, in an era where you would just do it yourself, man, he bought the book and started learning about what to do to make a recording studio. And the location I'm in now was the second location. And that one was built from the ground up to be a studio. The original that we came from and where Ed was head engineer and where I cut my teeth at a young age, learning how to record and create music. That was it, actually in an old home. And the studio was in the basement. And the music store, like you mentioned, was upstairs. And he was an Alvarez dealer, a Guild dealer. It was mainly guitar strings, harmonicas. It was mainly smaller stuff, but he had some guitars for sale.
Superb. Collective Soul were an important band for me when I started playing basses. The mix was always so great from a bass point of view. I mean, unlike a lot of big productions from the 80s where you really had to try and pick it out, but your stuff, it really popped. And some of the earliest songs I'd learned was stuff like Gel and December, when you get the guitar magazines and it have the bass tab in there. So I was always learning that kind of stuff. I mean, this continues on the new album as well. Are you and the band really hands-on in the mix, or is it just the dynamic of Collective Soul where it works to have it cut through so well?
The mix process is always something where we like to find somebody else to be a creative partner with us, right? Because we basically produce ourselves. We're all a little bit of producers in our own way. So the mix level is something we always like to work with somebody else, Bob Clearmountain on the second record. But now, we met Sean Groves on the Dosage recording. He was assistant engineer at Tree Studio, and that's where we met him. And I believe ever since we met him, we haven't done a record where he didn't engineer, and now we call him our co-producer. He's part of our team. And by the time it gets to mix down, that's in Sean's lap. But man, it's kind of like the essence of Collective Soul is there, and it's up to Sean to make sure it's presented properly.
It must be great when it comes back. Yeah, there I am. It's nice and clear. No need to tell them to budget. It's always there. It's great.
Everybody can have their slight little different things they may have done differently, but man, the mixes are great, and we trust Sean with everything we do.
What I find interesting is, though, you picked up the bass to be part of Collective Soul. You've been a musician for many years on guitar and piano, playing percussion and singing harmonies, I believe, on Ed's songs. But when he was putting the full band together, that's when you took up bass. Did you take to it, I don't want to say easily, but did it make sense already being a musician, knowing a fretboard, and you're a music fan of bands with great musicians like R.E.M., U2, The Police, so you kind of knew what was needed, perhaps, do you think?
It was more about chemistry, right? So my best friends were already in a band, and I was just kind of like barely committing. I was playing the percussion parts, singing the backups, and there would be 6 of us. And it was just apparent and evident that there was a weak spot, and he wasn't necessarily as tight as we all were. And so when I was ready to commit 100%, which thank God I did, because it wasn't months later that things started happening really quick. But I called Ed and I told him I'll play bass. And he's like, all right, you're playing bass. And I went out and bought a bass. Yeah, musically, I understood the songs. I understood the vibe. Musically, creatively, it was instant. I knew that would be instant. Of course, there's a learning curve on the instrument, but the fretboard is something I understood. I mean, if it's Western harmony, I got it. Don't put me in China and ask me about their scale, but if it's Western harmony, I got you covered. And of course, there's technique that instruments and all, things musical are a lifelong journey. So I'm still trying to be the best bass player I can be. But musically, no, it was instant.
You mentioned it was a fast learning curve for you. The single Shine, it blew up so fast, and you're out touring with the likes of Aerosmith and Van Halen. I'm going to go out on a limb, and your playing obviously proves otherwise, but did you ever feel like imposter syndrome because it happened so fast? It's like, I've only just picked this instrument up, and here I am supporting Van Halen. Did that ever creep in? 'Cause imposter syndrome is a musician thing.
I didn't, because we were so close. And again, let's just go back to the definition of a band. A band isn't 5 individuals that know how to play their instrument really well. That's not what a band is. We were a band, and right. I never felt like an imposter because we knew we were a band.
Definitely. I love that. Touring with Van Halen in 1995, my all-time favourite band.
Nice.
Michael Anton is a hero, and I've never heard a bad story about him. And I've heard you say how welcoming Van Halen were on that tour, and you'd hang out under the stage with Mike during Ed's solo. And
you heard the understage story.
I love that. What did he have? Was it just like a marquee canopy thing? What was it?
Well, Michael always had a nice little tent area on the side stage. It was called Mad Anthony's Cafe. He welcomed all of us, the Collective Soul guys, every night. We were hanging out in Mad Anthony's Cafe.
I love there was somebody aligned to like set that up for him at every gig.
Oh yeah, his name's Kevin Dugan. He's still his bass tech, and he would set that up every gig. But no, one night the under the stage story, there's grates, right? So I don't know why I thought it'd be funny, but I guess it was funny because even Sammy Hagar has told this story to other people when I'm not around. I've had other people come up to me and say, yeah, Sammy told me this hilarious story about you, which that really makes you feel like a rock star when Sammy Hagar is telling stories about you and you're not even there. But I had a joint, went under the grates. I'm like trying to get Michael's attention. I get Michael's attention. He's like, he points down. I'm like, and I shot up this huge puff of smoke, and there's Michael acting like he's shotgunning it right there. And Sammy looks over like, what the hell are y'all doing? That's that story in 1995. They couldn't have been more inspirational and couldn't have been a better shot in the arm for a young band. They treated us so well. It was like younger brothers, and they taught us so much and helped us, actually literally helped us along when we needed help. Yeah, that tour changed our trajectory, I believe.
Did you get to watch side stage? The sound must have been monstrous.
Oh, every night. I would miss a song or two every now and then and be in my dressing room, but are you kidding me? It was like 30-something dates. No way you can miss anything of that. You don't just go to the bus because you've already seen it.
Like what time sound check? I want to be there for sound check.
Actually, after the first show, I don't think either band sound checked the whole tour.
And you stayed in touch with Mike and Sammy, I believe. Have you done some shows on the Circle stuff?
Oh, we're great. Yeah, man. It's one of our most special relationships that we still cherish. We just got off one of those cruises that they do now with all the bands and stuff. The Legends of Rock cruise. Felt like I didn't know how we got there, but I guess we are there. We were the young band on the Legends of Rock cruise. That's what I told everybody. But yeah, we just got to hang out with them again. Man, they're there for us. Than they were back then. We didn't screw anything up. I think in '95, if we'd have went over the line and screwed something up, we'd have been regretting that for the rest of our lives. But they gave us carte blanche to do whatever we wanted to, and it turned out great.
And once Collective Soul were established and a headlining act, you got to take bands out on tour, and one of those bands was Marvelous 3, an Atlanta band fronted by Butch Walker, who's become an insanely successful producer. And I think Ed recently performed Shine with him at one of their reunion shows. Was Butch someone who you've been aware of for some time growing up in the Atlanta scene? As his history goes back like to the early 90s with South Gang prior to Collective Soul, and then it all comes around again for him with Marvelous 3 once you guys had broke.
Absolutely. We knew South Gang, and talk about another great friendship and an entire summer. What a great tour. Man, I wish I could just go back and relive that summer again. We had a blast. Great friends. And, watching another one that I didn't miss a whole lot from night to night. I tried not to miss anything.
Such a great performer. Did Butch sing backing vocals on the Blender album?
He probably did. Man, I forget it because we love getting our friends in there to sing some stuff. I'll have to re-look at the song list and see what he did. But that's something we love doing, is getting our friends on the records.
Did you go to any of those Marvelous 3 reunion shows which they did in town?
I wasn't able to make it. And the one in Atlanta that Ed got to go to, I was in the studio working with somebody else.
Dang it. The UK's been a little bit elusive to Collective Soul. I think he came over in 95 and then in 2006. Ever any talk of UK or European stuff, or does the US keep you continually busy?
The only talk is, I wish we'd have went over there a lot more when we were younger. Because now, unless we get that special opportunity to kind of open up for somebody and play in front of some bigger crowds. '06 was amazing. Manchester, a couple shows in London. We're selling out 2,500, 3,000 seats. And the crowds were like rabid for us because they hadn't seen the ones that know Collective Soul were really, really excited. I don't know why we don't go back. I mean, I do know why. It's because financially, it's almost a break-even adventure. And if we'd have went over there more, I feel like it would be a better thing for us. But God, last time we were there, it was a blast. It just makes you feel good to get over there and play in front of fans you hadn't seen in so long. And you can tell they're super excited to be at the show.
Yeah, Manchester's always a great rock town. My last question to you, well, I want you to time travel a little to a Friday night in the late 80s or early 90s, back in Stockbridge, Georgia, and you head into the video store. What movie soundtrack would you have on the Walkman, and what 3 tapes are you going to rent for the weekend?
The movie soundtrack's pretty easy. The Lost Boys in the late 80s, that was a hot soundtrack for us. That's what we were listening to. That's some early NXS.
Yes, sir.
Just some good stuff. The whole Lost Boys.
Are you a fan of the film as well?
Absolutely, man. Classic, man. The Frog Brothers. Come on.
Did you see that at the cinema, or was it a video rental? Do you remember?
It would have been, we probably saw it at the movies, but yeah, man, those VHS tapes, we would have wore something like The Lost Boys out over and over. When you could put in a VHS tape and watch any movie, that was magical technology in our era.
So we'll put Lost Boys on the list for soundtrack and tape one. Which other two films would you rent?
I remember watching a lot of the Rush. I remember watching the Rush live, Exit Stage Left. I remember loving watching Pink Floyd, The Wall, and other movies. I mean, I was a big fan of all kind of good stuff. Like all the John Hughes stuff was great. But if it had been me and my buddies, we probably would have rented something rock and roll, even like Song Remains the Same. Never did quite understand it, but we kept watching it over and over.
Which John Hughes films pop out for you? Because the music in those films was so great.
He defined an era, right? Just Pretty in Pink. I like the John Candy stuff. Uncle Buck, Great Outdoors.
Planes, Trains and Automobiles is just a perfect film. Well, Will, I want to wish you all the best for the upcoming tour. The new album is fantastic. And fingers crossed that maybe you'll get back to the UK at some point. It will be wonderful.
I'm crossing them. I'm crossing my fingers, my legs, everything, man. I want to get back. I want to play over there more. It's too rich. And if you ask any of the Collective Soul guys, that's where our heroes pretty much all are. I mean, outside of Van Halen, Tom Petty, and a handful of Paul Simon, a handful of others, that's where our heroes all hail from. So we need to get back there.
Super, man. Well, you enjoy the rest of the day. I appreciate you talking to me.
Yeah, cheers, man. Thank you for your time as well. See you next time, buddy.
Thanks so much to Will Turpin of Collective Soul for sharing some great stories and Van Halen tales with us on today's Straight to Video podcast. What a tour that must have been. All information about Collective Soul and their brand new album Here to Eternity can be found at collectivesoul.com. So as I've been mentioning on the past few episodes, we now have a Patreon for our 80s video shop in Alfreton, Derbyshire. We're bringing together a real community who want to help the shop to continue and grow. And if you check out patreon.com/80s video shop, you can see all the cool fun tiers we have available, starting at just £2 a month, and every single donation really makes a difference. Just this past week, we've announced a couple of Patreon-only events, which are totally free to anyone who is a patron, and there's a big event we're announcing this weekend too, which everyone over there will hear about first, so please take a look if you can. So that's all for this week's podcast, but I'll be back next Friday, so until then, make sure to always be kind. Please rewind and unwind, and I'll speak to you all real soon.